This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting-edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi everyone, it's Alexa Linton here. Thank you so much for joining us. Today I'm incredibly excited to be talking to someone that is a blast from the past for me. We have known each other for a number of years, and I think back like we're talking decades, and she's an incredible hoof care professional and just actually wrote an amazing book as well, which we're going to be talking about today on hoof care. Christina Cline, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. I was trying to rack my brain. I'm like, when was the last time we've seen each other? And I feel like it was,
oh my gosh,
a really, really long time ago.
I know what it's probably, I don't know, probably been close to a decade or something.
I think absolutely, for sure. I keep being dated lately where I'm like, are you sure it's been that long? Yeah, totally. So Christina, tell us a little bit. I know right now you're coming to us from Washington and that you're back and forth between Canada and Washington. Tell us a little bit about, some of your passion projects. Christina's been telling me a little bit about some of the things she's been really excited about. Of course, there's the book, but there's some other things going on as well. So what's happening for you?
Yeah, well, I know most people would probably expect me to talk nonstop about horses' feet and stuff, but that's kind of a sidebar almost to what I feel is most exciting going on in my life right now, which I just, before coming on this podcast here, I put a Belgian mare on the trailer to go to her new home. I picked her up in September. I'm not quite sure why. It just felt like it was the right thing to do. But she had been a plow horse for many years and had an explosion in the hitch and took herself and three other horses that were hitched to the plow and the plow through a fence. And the farmer deemed her crazy and was going to send her off to slaughter to the auction. And I picked her up, and the dentist looked at her mouth about 4 weeks after that, and her tongue had been deeply severed. And she also had hooks in her rear molars that were boring into her upper jaw.
Yeah.
So God bless that person. They donated the time to fix her teeth, and then I was like, well, you're not crazy. You were in pain. So just found her a new home with a knowledgeable horseman who's been driving light logging drafts for 30 years and knows her story and is smitten with her. She's a lovely, lovely horse that just was in a bad situation because of pain, and I'm happy to see her move on to somebody who deeply cares.
Wow. Yeah. And, I think we were talking about, before this, the subject of, sort of stewardship and, conscious rehoming and the sense of, also, being able to, I know I've rehomed a couple of mares that were deemed dangerous in other people's eyes. And, also because of, pain and trauma.
Right.
And so let's unpack that a little bit. Like for you, what was the rehabilitation process for her? Was it extensive? Was it, just like as soon as the teeth were shifted, she felt better? Like what did that look like for you two?
Yeah, actually, it was pretty easy. As soon as her teeth were fixed, she was literally a different animal. The first 3 weeks or so I had her, she was she was well behaved in a very quiet, very subdued way. And she only hung out with, I've got a herd of about 10 horses here, and she just hung out with one horse and one horse only. And even my yearling filly was booting her around.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd walk everywhere and maybe trot occasionally, but when the rest of the herd was kicking up their heels and blasting around the place, she was way behind and just trotting. And the evening after her teeth were fixed, I was feeding. I had the hay in the back of my truck, and it was night, so I knew the horses were following me because they always do when there's hay in the truck, but I couldn't see. And I was driving the hay up to this one bench on my property, and this thing just went blasting past my truck at a dead gallop. And it took me a fraction of a second to realize this is that mare. And this is the first time I have ever seen her gallop.
Yeah.
And she blasted past my truck, the first one, and she was running around bucking and tossing her head around. And from that day, her position in the herd started to change. She wasn't just this little doormat, and she actually told my yearling filly to go bugger off.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Wow.
For that mare. You know, it was a pretty kind of simple rehabilitation because she's a good-natured mare, and it was just her mouth that, had been really messed up. So that's absolutely what that process looked like.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like there was another horse as well. Have you had other horses that you've worked with in this way and sort of, helped along their path, so to speak?
Yeah, it turns out there have been several, actually, and I don't intentionally go out and try to find this.
No, I know that feeling.
I don't go looking for a project, but there's just been horses I've felt like led to bring into my life, and like there was this one Korab gelding that I saw, and I was like, that's a really nice horse. And I just felt led to go see him, and he was a basket case. The owner who was selling him, he was like rearing, spinning, bolting for the barn. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take that. And anyway, he just needed some behavioral guidance. Just like, we can be with humans, and your human can be your leader in a kind, two-way street, and you can learn to relax. And he turned into this, in about a year, he was just this rock solid horse that I could put anyone on. And I never planned on letting him go. But then a girlfriend of mine, her daughter, her 8-year-old daughter, fell in love with him, and he fell in love with her, and it's like, it's my time to back out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And they choose, right? So, I know for two of the two girls that I rehomed, the one actually started like basically haunting one of my clients' dreams.
Who wouldn't want their own equine stalker, right?
Right? And she's like, it was like a couple of weeks later, I had put her on the trailer to go to Hope, and she's like been there absolutely ever since. And when I was like, I can bring you home, she's like, don't you freaking dare.
Right.
It's so great. I mean, it's like, and she was a pack horse. She'd had a really tough life, and she took a little bit, she was quite emotionally traumatized when I got her, like rope, the rope marks in the neck. She'd obviously been lassoed. And, she was very, very, distrusting or mistrusting of people. It's so fascinating, it's just pulling those tools together. It's like the horses know that we have the tools that they need, right? Whether it's, we have the connections to the right dentist, we have the,
right.
For you, of course, we're going to get into the hoof stuff, but that you can actually help them on that level. Because for many horses, I mean, how were both these horses nice and balanced hoof-wise when they came to you?
Well, no, the Belgian had feet that hadn't been trimmed in quite some time. She was really overgrown, and honestly, I take no credit for rehabilitating her feet. I've got 40 dry, rocky acres.
Perfect.
And when I got her here, I just turned her out with the herd, and by the time that the equine dentist had gotten there 3-4 weeks later, she had already perfectly manicured her feet, and I'm like, great, my work there is done. And I didn't even have to lift a pair of nippers.
I love that. Oh my gosh, that's great. Yeah.
So, and the core ab I mentioned, he had some front toe cracks, but he wasn't like a pathological hoof train wreck or anything.
Right. Yeah.
So, I haven't done, my interest, because I do so much hoof rehabilitation on the job, my interest, if I've been working with horses and then found them new homes, has been more like behavioral, working on the behavior. Zoe. Sorry. Zoe's chiming in, my dog.
Yes.
The girl. It has been a bit more on the behavioral end of the spectrum, just for variety for myself. Like I said, I do so much hoof rehab on the job that I still feel passionately about that, but it's nice to explore trying to work with horses to behaviorally help them along, even if it's just fixing the teeth, which is still a fascinating learning process for me.
Oh, so, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just had a natural balance dentist on. It was, super interesting to learn more, about that side of things and how much it, teeth, a tooth imbalance or something like, this mare had would impact the whole body, the way she was able to move and,
right.
Everything really, emotionally, otherwise. So that's awesome. So with the horsemanship work that you're doing, do you have anything that you're particularly passionate about at the moment?
Yeah, well, that's a big question.
It is, isn't it?
That's a really big question. You know what I've been focusing on, and I'm sure it's a multi-lifetime journey, is just how to earn each horse's trust, and they're all so different. For the Belgian, earning her trust was a matter of getting her teeth fixed. For some horses, like the Korab I mentioned, earning his trust was just being quiet, calm, and consistent. He just needed somebody who had he just needed like a quiet energy about him, not pussyfooting around him, but just kind of calm and grounded. And that pulled him out of the stratosphere. And then I've got some of my own personal horses that I've got a horse, Wolf. He's a 10-year-old Arab who I'd like to do endurance with. He's got a lot of potential there. It's just a super fun horse, but he can get really hot. So it's a matter of how can I bring him to that excitement level of horses running all around him without him, losing his brain and his connection to me. So a lot of it, and I've got a Mustang I have too that I got this past fall, and she's been handled, but she wasn't totally sold on the idea that, wow, humans can be worthwhile to be around. I try to catch her and scratch her and, just respect her space. But, it wasn't until I brought out some cookies, and then she's like, oh, I have a purpose for you, and I am now motivated to try to get along and to participate in this. And I don't say just go to the cookies every time, and that can be its own mess. But for her, it was that bridge, because she just was like, I don't see a purpose for making you worthwhile. And it's like, oh, wait, cookies. We didn't have those in the wild. I see a use for you. And from that point, it's like, well, we can start doing these other things where cookies aren't involved, but she's still motivated to try to connect. So
totally. I relate
to
to
me,
that.
yeah. What's that? Sorry?
I said I relate to her. Yeah. For me, it's chocolate.
Right? Yeah. Give me chocolate. Yeah, exactly. Give me chocolate and then we'll talk.
Yeah. So awesome. Yeah, and it sounds to me like there's this sense of each horse is so unique, and they there's no cookie cutter method for you about what you're gonna, how you're gonna, connect and relate and work with each horse. Is that sort of what you're working with there? So why it's such a big question as well.
Right. I wish there was kind of a formulaic approach, but kind of like behavior and with horses' feet, there's no formulaic approach.
Absolutely.
That just have to stay. It's a balancing act between sticking to like some of my, I don't want to call them goals, but like aspirations. Like I want the horses to, like, for instance, be safe.
Yeah.
For anyone to handle. I want the horses' feet that I work on to, fall within these parameters of health and stuff. But the way I get there is kind of subject to change from each horse in each situation. So kind of staying flexible without totally snapping and breaking in the wind, I guess.
Yeah, what a beautiful analogy. Yeah, absolutely. And I know that for myself, working with horses, it's like, working with Diva is going to be completely different than working with, the neighbors' horses that I work with, or, like it's and even doing body work, the same thing is true, right? One horse will be like, I love body work. Another one's going to be like, I'll eat you. And then, right? They're not all on the same page that way. And so, to be able to, I find, because you're talking here a lot about trust building, really in my mind, that sense of I'm gonna be, here and listening, and then we're gonna move out from that listening place into what you were actually needing. And that, I know when I do work with horses, like that's like the most trust building, rapport building thing that we can do, is to be like, I see you, and I'm gonna do my darndest to understand you, and not get stuck in a box around what I deem is the right way to work here. Yeah, for sure. That's beautiful. And so, like, tell me a little bit. So with the hoof trimming, I've done a little bit with Diva and stuff, but tell me a little bit about how that same concept applies to feet, because I think that's an area where often we get into a little bit of like tunnel vision, like the hoof should look like this, or right. How does that apply?
Right. Well, the tunnel vision thing, I think that's a very apt way of putting it. There are some general parameters for health in the horse's foot, but in recent years, the American West Mustang hoof model has been put up as this, icon of what an ideal hoof should look like, and that's just not realistic. And then I've run into a lot of people who then start just fretting that their horse's feet don't look like a Mustang foot. It's like, well, your horse is in a paddock in the lower mainland of BC, and it rains here 19 months out of the year. Constantly. And it's a totally different environment. And so it's hard to convey that at times to some people, like, okay, your horse's foot doesn't look like a Mustang. It's still a very healthy foot. It's still doing okay. It's still doing well, very well, actually. But there's just so many factors that go into each horse's hoof, and what is trying to discern what is the best hoof that particular horse can attain. It's a matter of genetics and diet and environment and lifestyle and youth and body posture and, to factor in all those things. And then if you throw a curveball in, like a horse has had a long-standing pathology, you just have to completely give up the idea of ever having a perfect looking foot and manage as best you can what is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not lose too much sleep over that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. So are there any sort of main things that you're looking for in a healthy hoof?
Well, hey, I wrote a book on that.
I know you did.
For further information, you should read this book.
There we go. Yes, it is called The Essential Hoof.
Yeah, it's the Essential Hoof Book, and I co-wrote it with a dear friend of mine, Susan Kauffmann, who's an amazing writer and is a brilliant journalist. And not to totally just plug I will answer the question, not just totally plug the book. But I hope our goal and our hope for that book was to answer questions like that in a very tangible way for the horse owner, so that they, because it seemed like we surveyed the hoof books available on the market, and a lot of them either were the wording was very technical, and so it just seemed overwhelming. And there was a couple books that were written and the language wasn't too technical, but they didn't have very many illustrations to show what a healthy frog looks like, or because there's a range of what healthy looks like. Yeah, it's not just one thing. Yeah. So I hope we've accomplished that by making it readable, accessible, and lots of illustrations. Yeah. To help, but to help the horse owner visually see what is the range of healthy, and then be able to evaluate their own horse's feet. But to answer your question, what some of the things that I look for in general in a healthy hoof is like a wide open frog, not thrushy, good hoof walls that aren't peeling and that are growing like straight down from the coronet. So there's not a lot of bend in the hoof wall dishing. If a hoof has a lot of pronounced growth rings, that's a big red flag. Yeah. And then probably a hoof angle that falls in the range of like 48 degrees to 56 degrees. It's just a ballpark. This is all subject to the individual horse, but those are some just basic broad guidelines.
Absolutely.
And then good thick soles, which is really hard to talk about. It's more like you have to look at them, but thick soles. And some of that can be affected by hoof trimming, and a lot of it really gets back to that diet, lifestyle, environment, and exercise.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that, because I think we again with that pigeon, that tunnel vision, we're like looking at the foot, right? It's very common in our culture to be like quite singular in our focus, right? It's like if it's a hoof thing, it's a hoof thing, right? Rather than if it's a hoof thing, it could be this or this or this, or you know what I mean? Like all these, other factors that are impacting the hoof. So, what do you find are the most impactful things around like healthy feet?
Right. The longer I do this, the more I totally believe that exercise is almost the number one important thing for healthy feet. And I'll say that in quotes, because diet is also super important and quality hoof care is critical too. But I see so many horses that I see a number of horses that have decent hoof care, are on a decent diet, but then if you really up the exercise, their feet just blossom. Yeah. It's kind of like if I don't work out my arms very much, and then all of a sudden I start going to the gym and start actually using my biceps, they improve. So absolutely not to say exercise is paramount overall, but the longer I do this, I think exercise has been totally underutilized in terms of growing a healthier foot. And most of our horses aren't exercised enough, flat out.
Definitely. Especially if you look at, like, you know, here on the West Coast, right? Like, horses are generally, so for those of you who are tuning in from other places, give you a little bit of perspective on West Coast living for horses as a general rule, not always, but a lot of horses are kept, you know, of course, in smaller pasture, or, you know, not even pastures, paddocks, usually, hopefully, walkout stalls, but sometimes not. Generally, and, you know, through the winter months of, like, what, November through April, would you say they are in those paddocks almost, you know, like, you know, exclusively, except if they're taken out to work in a ring usually. And so, it's not a ton of movement. Generally, the paddocks are small enough that to even get up to a canter or a gallop is impossible. You know, and the reason for that, this is not just because everybody's, you know, it's, you know, serves a purpose. We have horses in a rainforest, right? So trying to put them out on pasture or, you know, have them in different circumstances can be difficult unless you have about, you know, $100,000 to spend on material for such things. You know, a lot of, right? So, you know, I can see why you say the exercise piece, because, you know, you know, I would hazard a guess that many horses don't really move at all, you know, moving around their paddock kind of thing. And then, you know, generally, like, sort of under control within a ring. Is there a type of exercise for those type of horses, like those horses that are living in that environment, that you would recommend? Or is it just kind of like, get them out and moving, like whatever it takes?
Just get them moving in any way possible. And as you described, the, like, West Coast equine living conditions, I think most of us horse owners, we really do try to do the best we can.
Absolutely.
And that's just a logistical restriction of the area.
Totally.
So I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. No. But just whatever you can do to get them out and get them moving. You know, and a lot of people don't have access to covered arenas, and just how fun is it to ride, you know, in a rainstorm every day. But even things, getting them out, if you can put on your, Gore-Tex and hand walk them someplace, or if you're able to ride, or if they're able to be turned out, in an arena and just do some groundwork, or getting them moving any which way you can creatively come up with. Is going to be fabulous. And just better for their feet and better for their minds too. Absolutely. But it is admittedly a logistical problem in a lot of parts. A lot of parts of the country,
especially this part of the world. When you look around, this is probably not where horses would have lived if given a choice.
Oh no! If you turned them out, they'd all go east and head over the mountains and say, to get away from this waterlogged environment.
Where are the arid highlands? Where?
Exactly.
Totally. I mean, if we think of, you know, that natural environment for a lot of horses or wild horses, it would be, you know, pretty different from what we have operating here. And, you know, of course, that also factors into the nutrition piece, because we get these insanely lush growth periods. And, you know, I'm sure you see the possible, you know, issues with that when you go out to see horses as well. You know, talk a little bit about that. What are sort of some of your things that you share around nutrition? Or is there anything that you really sort of recommend? Or, you know, I know it's an interesting topic.
Well, and first caveat, too, is that the more exercise you give your horse, the less likely they are to succumb to nutritional improprieties.
I agree. Yes. Yes.
So, and again, it gets back to living in the rainforest. Like the West Coast is just really, it's either underwater or the forage is overly abundant.
Yes.
So horses in their more natural environment would be living in more like a shrub steppe type of place with dry bunch grasses and stuff instead of just these golf courses.
Completely.
Which is essentially water. They can eat all day in a 15 by 15 area, and still have, grass to spare if they didn't move,
Yes.
So, I always recommend owners watch their horses' feet when they go out on pasture. It's not to say that horses can never have pasture. Just be very aware for weight gain on pasture. If the horse becomes tender-footed, when the spring grass starts to come in, that probably means they're getting too much sugars in their diet. And also, we live in a time too where, well, essentially, I'll just say this: a lot of horses are couch potatoes. Not only are they not getting enough nutrition or not enough exercise, but the nutrition they're getting is generally pretty rich.
High test, yeah.
With high test. Yeah, it's high test feed. The hays are rich, and then they're given grains on top of that, and then they're not exercised. So, and a lot of people they're so used to seeing horses fat that is what they think is normal.
Totally.
And then when they see a horse that's actually really healthy weight, they think that horse is too thin. So educate your eye to what actually is a good healthy weight.
Yeah.
And then most horses, they don't need grains. They don't, a vitamin mineral supplement may be another thing, but most horses are really not working hard enough to need grains unless they're, a thoroughbred type metabolism.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's an exception to the rules, and I'm not going there at the moment. But for the average, for the average horse,
that's a whole other webinar or a whole other.
That's all. Yeah. Right. But for most horses, just a simple, hay-based diet with the vitamin mineral supplement to fill in any nutritional gaps. Absolutely. Is really going to do them just fine.
Totally. Absolutely.
So, because, unfortunately, too rich of a diet shows up in the horse's feet, and they get the dishy walls, and they get the growth rings, and they get tender-footed, and it's just kind of a cascading effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't.
Yeah, that's great. And anything else? So we've talked about, that exercise piece being super essential, diet sort of following up quite close behind that. Anything else that's recommended for healthy feet? Like you said also, like, optimally, like really good hoof care is going to go a long way. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, for myself anyways, as a lay person in terms of this, becoming educated was really important for me. Like, in terms of what am I looking for? Like, I don't know what, I don't know what a healthy foot looks like, and so, I wasn't able to recognize if I was getting really good hoof care or not times because I just didn't know, what I was needing to, what I was actually trying to see in my horse's hoof. Yeah.
And the amount that we have to learn, that the amounts that we have to /can/should/
yes,
would be a good idea to learn as horse owners can kind of be overwhelming. I get that.
Oh my gosh.
That's it, general, and I know, people can be intimidated by their horse's feet in a sense, and it's like, oh, I'll just leave that to the realm of the veterinarian and farrier.
Yeah.
But it really isn't overall rocket science.
No.
And I fully believe in the capability of horse owners to learn the basic principles of what makes a good, what a healthy foot is going to look like. And then, if your horse has pathologies that make it exceptions to the rule, then you've got that knowledge base too to operate from.
Yeah.
So just educating, like the Essential Hoof Book is a good, I think it's a good resource, but there's other good resources online to that people can access, and even just having discussions with your healthcare professional, with your veterinarian, not to harass them, but just to say, hey, I've been thinking about frogs. Can you point out on my horse what's maybe good or bad, or and just to have them, start to talk to you a little bit more, instead of just totally handing over the keys.
Yeah.
Just becoming a bit more of a active participant.
I really love that. I think that, in terms of, us as horse lovers and owners, and I sort of like, that word is so weird to me, but, like stewards,
right.
It can be overwhelming. Like, it can be like, oh my God, I have to learn about this and this and this. Like, there's a lot. I also think, to see it as like something really interesting and fascinating. It's like, I get to get curious about this part of my horse, and and sort of make, bring that into more of a normal space of like, oh, I'm gonna actually have a conversation with my hoof care professional about this, and learn more, and because this animal hopefully is going to be a part of my life for like a good long time, and this will allow me to have their health as a main priority. So everybody, check out the Essential Hoof Book. It is on. I'm looking at it on Amazon.ca right now, and it looks amazing. I haven't got it yet, but I definitely will be getting it as well. These sorts of resources. Thank you, Christina, and to your partner Susan for putting this together, because, having resources that are easily accessible, I think it really makes a big difference. It's not something we have to go searching to find. So thank you for this. Wait, tell me a little bit about, when you decided to create this book, like how long did it take to create? Like, what was the process for you and Susan?
Oh, I think it was about a 3-year process. I almost want to call it ordeal. Susan has a contact. Being a journalist, she's got more contact. She's got the contacts. She was kind of took over. She was in charge of contacting publishers and stuff like that, and I was more the boots on the ground.
Yep.
This is what I do for a living. I don't necessarily know journalists to plug a book idea. So she did that, but she approached Trafalgar Square with this book concept, and they were totally in on it and were very supportive, despite some delays in us getting the manuscript to them.
Yeah.
But it took longer because of life.
Life does that.
Yeah, she and her husband were building a house at one point. I was moving at one point, and there's not a lot of extra time in the day. But so it had taken, I think about 3 years to get it to them, and then they did their magic with editing and formatting, and then it came out at the end of September.
Oh, wonderful!
Year.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it was an adventure. I have a lot of respect for people who sit and work at a computer all day without going mental. The days where I'd put in 8 hours on the computer, I was about crazy at the end of the day.
I'm sure.
I can't sit still for that long, but
well done. Well done.
So, yeah.
Like I truly believe it was well worth it, and it seems to have, I saw it all over the place when it as it was coming out and stuff, the trainers sharing, and I was just really impressed with how people were like really, really like loving what you put together. So I'm excited.
It seems kind of surreal on my end, to tell you the truth.
I bet.
Yeah. I hope it really does fill that niche for people to be easily accessible in his language and illustrated enough so people can grasp the concepts easily. So
absolutely.
So that they can more easily participate in their horse's hoof care.
Yes, like empowered horse people. Let's do it for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. And how has it been doing? Has it been doing all right so far?
Well, yeah, it seems to be, it exceeded the publisher's expectations, I think. They were very happy with how it was selling. It's going to second print already.
Amazing.
So, again, it seems kind of surreal, like, whoa.
Did that just happen?
Did that just happen? And I think it's also being translated into French and German, I believe.
Wow.
Or at least that was in the works. So.
Yep. Amazing. Congratulations. Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. And I will post below in my podcast page on wholehorse.ca, I'll post the link for the Amazon page for the book. So if anybody's interested in grabbing it, it will be there. So, we're going to wrap up fairly shortly here, Christina. Is there anything else sort of on the horizon for you that you're really excited about? I mean, you've sort of like closed some chapters with these horses and rehoming them in beautiful places, and with the kind of their heart people. So, what's coming up for you?
Honestly, a year off. A year off of big projects. The last few years have been like with the book and with moving and setting up a farm and stuff. It's just it's been a lot of work, and it's been very rewarding. And now I'm just kind of trying to take it easy. And that's a challenge right there.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So, basically a year of just spending time with the animals in my care and hanging out with them, and which just sounds glorious. I know it doesn't sound that exciting. Maybe it doesn't sound that exciting on a podcast, but right now it's like, oh my gosh. I'll just go to work and have no other big projects hanging over my head. That sounds actually quite lovely. I'm sure there's many people on this podcast that can relate to the absolutely dreamy idea of a year kind of off of, because those big projects can sort of loom and be, feel like a lot, some big pressure. So I'm sure after the book was released and things are just like, okay, we need to just take some time, ride the horses. Yeah, for sure.
Exhale.
That's great. So before we finish up today, Christina, I'd love to have you share just a few resources. Do you have anything, like, other than your amazing book? Is there anything that you would sort of point people to? And this doesn't have to be just hoof care. This can be, whatever's inspiring you at the moment.
Yeah, well, for hoof care and actually diet-related information, there's a couple great websites. One is ECIR Horse. I believe that's .org. .org. That has a lot of information. If you think you have a metabolically challenged horse, it's got a lot of great information there. And then there's also Safer Grass. Again, I believe that's .org. Safergrass.org also has some great nutritional information on it. And that's in terms of diet. For hoof care, Pete Ramey's website, hoofrehab.com is a great one.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest go-to one. That's got a lot of information and some other links to other sites and stuff. So,
awesome. Yes, I like that one a lot. Yeah.
It's got really good information. His books are also great.
Yeah, and his one online course, or the sort of like, on DVDs and stuff was really, that one really loved it. Yeah, for sure. So Pete Ramey, and that's Ramey for anybody who has visited his sites before. And anything just in general that's sort of like inspiring you as far as resources. So, anything else coming up?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Anything else, inspiring you as far as resources are concerned? Horsemanship, any other areas?
Well, I've got a good friend actually in Squamish, Lauren Fraser, who's my inspiration and my go-to person for all things equine behavior related. She's very thoughtful. Lauren Fraser, equine behaviorist. She's a fantastic, knowledgeable resource that I consult with to ask behavior-related issues.
Nice. Okay.
And how to,
awesome.
She's lovely, and I'm sure there's other good resources for equine behavior. She's just my I consider her my teacher in that regard.
Nice. That's great.
So.
Cool. Okay. Well, it's been really fantastic to have you on today, Christina, and explore. And, we talked about before the call, everybody, we were like, okay, we're just going to follow where this went. And I think that's exactly kind of what happened today, which was really fun. And of course, to reconnect after, over a decade.
Right.
And I do hope that this means that we get to actually see each other at some point here. That would be also amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming on today and spending the time with us.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks so much.
You're so welcome. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time out. I know that we're all busy, and so it means a lot for me and Christina to have you here. So we're signing off for today's podcast. And have an awesome couple of weeks.